아주 잘 먹었어요. 아, 네. 안 나오는데요?
안 나오네.
안 나오는 줄 알았어요.
Guys, just before I start, just recognize I'm a bit hungover from last night, so I just want to make that known. If I slur, that's because of that, not because of my lack of rhetorical flair. Okay? Yeah. Right. Guys, the global poor live in a system of oppression called No22. I just wanted to say that, yeah. But seriously, the global poor are seriously in a problematic situation. Global convergence is a fucking lie. If you look at all the empirical evidence, globally and domestically, that the poor people are getting poorer and poorer throughout the ages, while the rich people, gifted by either the birth lottery or the fact of they've been benefited by the state, have been getting richer and richer. The 1% of people within countries like Korea and even the United States are dictating the wealth, have a monopoly over the wealth, while they refuse to give that money back, but also have refused to have political action in order to create systematical systems that actually can help these people from dying. You guys need to also recognize how dire the situation the poor are right now, right? These poor people aren't simply poor people like me who can't afford apartments like NC, but these people are people below the poverty line, meaning that their life and their day-to-day lives are a struggle in which they do not have food, they do not have shelter in the winter. It means that these people's lives are threatened. This is the context that you guys need to know before going on to this debate. So we're going to give you a series of 4 arguments, right? 1, why principally the government can only use the threat of violence in terms of criminal punishment once they fulfill their duty of reciprocity, and why in the poor these people do not fulfill that duty, therefore the government principally cannot punish them. Secondly, in terms of in legal theory, why you need malicious harm. If it's something that you want to live and you act out of self-defense, you cannot be principally harmed. Thirdly, why this exacerbates the cycle of poverty and this severs social mobility, and NC will come up and say why this policy will actually increase the impetus for structural change for apathetical people in the public. NC is smart, he'll do that very well. Let's go on to this. Before that setup, right? A few clarifications. 1, as I mentioned in the intro, the poor means that these are poor people below the poverty line, struggling in life with that situation, unable to have homes, and all these things, right? We're not talking about simply a bit poor people. Secondly, this is not exclusive to welfare policies. The government are going to still have welfare policies like food stamps and blah, 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 and all these things, right? But this is a simply safety net. If you are in a situation, an often context when welfare policy lacks a lot of things, even if you are, if you're going to die, if you're going to starve, you stealing bread is not a problem. Thirdly, this is going to limit this context of this is going to be limited to things that are necessary correlated to your survival. Meaning you're going to be accepted and absolved if you steal a food blanket. That doesn't mean simply because you're poor you can steal a Lamborghini or you can go out and sexually harass people. There is a clear reason for that, right? Let's go on to arguments. Firstly, clarification, go.
So, following this line of logic, would you also be okay with vigilantism in communities where there's no good police system, or there is no good police system?
Sure. If you can prove that there is actually a lack of structural police and the government is not fulfilling their duty to protect the citizens, we're fine with vigilantism as well. But that's a separate debate. Let's talk about this debate first. Let's go on to the first argument, guys. The government, and the fact that the government can punish people is based on something similar to a social construct, right? The justification why the government has power to put you guys and take away your rights and put you in the criminal court or put you in jail that deprives you of many things is because we have given that power as a collective to that community, to that government, right? But that comes under the justification of reciprocity. The reason why we allow the government to have this dictatorship over monopoly is because they at least have a minimum obligation to provide to us protection, but also provide to us to be accountable. The global poor in this situation lack that sense of reciprocity, right? For 5 or 6 main reasons, right? 1, there's a lot of things the government are actively oppressing these people in many situations. They lack minimum wage laws, meaning even if they work 3 to 4 jobs, 24/7, they lack the amount of money to actually sustain their lives, right? They can't buy homes, they're starving and they're struggling in the winter, they often freeze to death in store station, right? Secondly, they have bad working conditions that the government is simply inacting to solve. There's a lot of situations the government prioritizes companies and corporations and factories like Samsung, even though they're doing seriously shitty things like factories collapsing, right? But thirdly, recognize the asymmetrical investment of education and infrastructure. You need, if you want to go over and rise with the social ladders, you need education.
situation, but in often situations, if you're a poor community like Harlem, the government run by white people and rich people do not care about investing in your education, which means you're structurally and systematically disadvantaged in the first place. But things like healthcare as well, right? The rich people don't care about affordable action, they're against it. That's why even if you're poor and you deserve a right to be protected, you're spending all your life saving in your mother's health fees. That's why you yourself are actually suffering and unable to afford food, right? But fifthly, there's things like there's a general trend of gerrymandering, a lack of political interest in capital, not only by the rich people, they're directly unincentivized to help the poor, but also for people like us, right? Above the minimum wage, we generally have, although we're not directly culpable for creating it, we have a general culpability because we have inaction and we lack empathy, right? All these analysis leads to a conclusion, right? The conclusion that the government is not doing its fundamental role of protecting these poor people in a dire situation. That's why it fundamentally lacks the justification to actually harm these people and criminally punish them. Secondly, very shortly, analysis of self-defense, right? In a legal system, in a micro legal system, we allow people to kill people when they're in dire situations, right? We also allow people to kill people when they actually are trespassing in their property. All these things is because they lack malicious intent, and if you are to be criminally punished severely, you need to have an intent to harm that person. But when that intent is that I want to save myself, because if I do not save myself, if I do not shoot that person, he might kill me, in that case you do not have the justification to criminally jail these people. We think this is analogous to self-defense, and that's also a principal argument that they need to engage with. Lastly, why this exacerbates the cycle of poverty of social mobility. Prison is really bad. And we think that prison is really bad, and it's a necessary evil for things in dire situations, but especially for these poor people who do not have the ability or do not have other alternatives, you should not put them into this dire situation. Why? Because this fundamentally severs the possibility of social mobility for two reasons. One, the fact that you have a criminal record that you come from prison means you'll be unable to get any other job outside. This is especially harmful for people who are already below the poverty line, right? But secondly, things like gang affiliation. If you go into prison, because I don't want to be raped, I often go to gangs and I often try to have an affiliation right now, right? If you have 5 or 10 years there, that creates this interpersonal relationship with the gang. So even if you go out of prison, you're often scarred by the fact that these gangs come to you. We protect you then. That's why you are in debt to us, which leads you to participate further in criminal activities that fundamentally also further set your ability for having a good job or finding prospects of getting over the poverty line, right? This is especially harmful for the poor. People like NC, even if he goes to prison, he can come out because his apartment, he can get other jobs or work at S&T, right? But for the poor who lack alternative in the first place, the fact that if you go to prison, you are although you do not have alternatives, the rest of the even flimsy possible alternatives are taken away from you. At the end of the conclusion is this: if the government wants to actually punish these people, they need to do their duty first. They're not doing it in all scopes of the government. That's why they lack the principal ability to actually do this policy. We're very proud to close this. Thank you.
여기 앉아도 될 것 같은데. 네. 준대.
I think when you talk about wanting to help the poor, that you cannot just simply assume that the state is dysfunctional and is unable to help to correct the justice system. Because this debate is just not about whether or not the state is capable of wanting to, whether or not the state is incapable of helping the poor, but it's also whether or not we can make lives better for the poor. I don't think at any point in Prime Minister's speech was he able to tell us why is it that a life of not punishing people and a life of wanting to ignore the poor, ignore the system that systematically disrupts the poor's ability to live is one that is functional and preferable at the end of the day. So the first thing I want to talk about is I want to rebut the idea coming from Prime Minister, because the first thing he said is that the rich monopolizes property and that it's very easy. The rich monopolizes property. I think the first problem I have is that it's very easy to just correct the system whereby the poor monopolizes the property. You have things like inheritance tax. You have things like real estate property tax, for example. You have government systems that actually help the rich want that actually get money from the rich in order for the rich to be able to help the poor at the end of the day. But ultimately, this doesn't fix the inequalities that the poor are facing at all. The problem is that all the justifications, nothing human, is that it assumes that a country cannot have a welfare system that is functional. And I think that's ultimately problematic at the end of the day. They say it is not enough. But we don't think that it's fair for you to ignore your government, the system's flaws, and shift the entire blame to the communities that are the most unfortunate in status quo, right? I think that if the state cannot fix or control any system and continues to neglect the flaws of their welfare system, then logically that state can't function at all at the end of the day. That means that the state then ceases to function as a government at the end of the day. Let's look at what the things I have. Yeah.
A functional welfare system will still never be a perfect welfare system. There will always be some poor people who fall below the safety net. For those people, will you still punish them and put them into jail?
Right, so that assumes that you can't have there's no incentive for the rich to want to help the poor at the end of the day. But I'll tell you in my speech why is it that if we continue to punish the poor for stealing or for taking away the property of a person, this will ultimately help them at the end of the day. The first thing, I think that we're very happy to still punish the poor, but we don't think that we think that the punishment should be proportional to the degree of how much they steal, for example, right? So we don't think that the poor should be punished to the fullest extent of the law. We believe in proportional punishment, where things like if you steal a bread, for example, will give you a small fine. But if you steal things like if you steal property or if you steal money from other people, that means that there's more jail time for you in that instance. This means that we think it will create a more rehabilitative justice stance that we would like to take at the end of the day. The first argument that I have is that I think this opens up opportunities for the poor to have a better quality of life because you don't antagonize the rich or other communities. The first thing I think is that once you have the jail system, what's good in the jail system is that they're able to train the prisoners to actually have skills. They're able to do things like prisons like in the oceanic countries, for example. They train their prisoners to have skills. You can sue, you can try to get into entrepreneurship, for example, even if it's at a small scale. That's far better when they actually are certified to have those skills versus going out in the open and not being able to get any jobs at all because the companies will continue to discriminate the poor because they are deemed as being unskilled at the end of the day. What it fixes is that if you're in jail, for example, the state actually recognizes that you actually have a skill or a subset of skill that you can use at the end of the day. This also means that the poor people, the poor communities can also find a new purpose and meaning because they have a quiet skill in life as well. What this means is that they are able to feel comfortable with themselves and tell themselves that there are also other ways for them to not steal and actually get money to save their family. What we also consider that this means they might be out of job for a short term period, but we think this is still better at the end of the day. Because in a world where no one gets punished, even if there are good people out there, right? We think that companies' behavior or people's behavior towards the rich will still be towards the poor will still be the same as well. They continue to discriminate. They will continue to label poor people as unskilled, as unproductive at the end of the day. And this is far worse when no one wants to empathize with the poor at all. What this means is that you don't antagonize the rich individuals or rich individuals by saying that poor people can just get whatever they want because they are just poor, right? I think what this means is that it becomes far worse if you don't punish because you instill the mistrust within people at the end towards the poor people. That means that there's less incentive to also help the poor. This means there are less handouts. This means there's less NGOs hiring you. This means that there's less welfare programs. The same problem that the Prime Minister wanted to talk about in the first place because you continue to segregate and you continue to instill the stereotype against poor people as well. This also hurts them on a political level as well because the first, politicians no longer want to talk about the poor people because it's no longer a winning point for them at the end of the day. People, at the end, the poor always be at the dying end, right? Because when politicians don't talk about it, they don't garner attention towards poor people, that means that, no thank you, is that poor people will never be able to get the attention that is required in public discourse. This means that when they are less likely to get loans, for example, because banks always think that poor people are unable to pay back those loans. This means that there's less welfare programs because politicians, no one wants to fight for the poor at the end of the day. And all of this is just because you don't punish them and because you let them get away with the crimes that they commit at the end of the day. This means that the poor will always continue to be victimized at the end of the day. This is even worse when you disrupt the social order in society. When no one wants to help the poor, that's where it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy for the poor that they will you legitimize the fact that the poor cannot be productive at the end of the day. You legitimize the fact that the poor is not useful within society at the end of the day. This doesn't fix the justice system as how the Prime Minister hoped that we wanted to have in the first place. The impact to this is simple. The first is that we think if you punish this individual, you are more likely able to restore the confidence about poor people as well. This means that poor people are unlikely to want to steal from others. Poor people are less likely to be seen as a threat to society, and poor people are more likely to be, society is more likely to help poor people because they see there is an inherent need for them to fix the system at the end of the day as well. This means that ultimately, poor people will get the attention and poor people will be able to be helped, and therefore there won't be a need for you to steal away the property of a possession of other people. Thanks.
Here we go.
Do you have enough memory?
I think, wait. If not, you can use your phone.
We just heard very simple argument comes from team oppositions, right? Team opposition said, if you punish the poor is not going to commit a crime. Even if you punish the poor in the prison, they will be trained, and then they will be nice, productive members of the society. If that is the line of logic from the oppositions, I don't think in any country in the world we see the problems of poverty. Poverty is more complicated, right? Even if I punish you, if I'm in the very desperate situation, my baby is crying because I need a bread, and even if I know I'm going to be punished, these people is going to commit a crime anyway, right? And these people is going to be in the prison, and the prison is going to punish them more. That is why they can't escape from the poverty line. We think this is the problem. They also said poor is going to commit a crime recklessly because they can be protected by the law. No, I don't think people want to commit a crime, but they are in the very, very, very like poverty situation. They will commit a crime because even if I can commit a crime, nobody knows I'm below the poverty line or I'm over the poverty line because court is going to decide, right? If I go to the convenience store, I know the store manager has a gun and that manager probably can shoot me, then I'm not going to commit a stupidly reckless crime. I think that is the totally wrong characterizations, right? With that, I have one argument. They said government functioning right now, or we said government is not functioning. They said under our policy, people is going to hate the poor more, but I'm going to prove to you why under our policy, people is going to gain more motivations to help the poor, mostly middle class like us. Before moving on to my first argument, I have a several response, right? Jun Tae gave you 5 different reasons why we can't solve the problem. Government is systematically oppress the people. And the lazy opposition says, no, government is functioning right now. That is why we don't see any problem. They said we have an inheritance tax. Right, if I have a 1 million USD and my inheritance tax only like 40%, 50%, sometimes some countries, because there's a big political party and big political power, that is why inheritance is not getting bigger, right? But in the status quo, we see many problems, right? Even if under their policy, like Mai gave the POI, the functioning social welfare doesn't mean we can solve the problems right now. But what Jun Tae told you in today's debate, hey, government oppress these people, right? Lack of minimum wages, right? Sometimes society sacrifices the poor to benefit the middle class and the rich. In the economic downturn, we pump a lot of money. We have inflation. That is why price of the good is getting higher and higher and higher. Even if I paid by the convenience store, my payment cannot pay my ass. We think that's the problem. That is the concept of natural unemployment, right? The government don't want to solve the problems of unemployment rate because 0% of the unemployment rate, meaning too much inflation, right? This government is producing the poor. They also said we see the problems of education because school in the Harlem area is not good. That education cannot solve the problems, right? There's no healthcare and there's inaction. All these problems come from my prime minister, conveniently ignored by the OP, meaning government is oppressed. That is why government have obligations to provide the weapons to protect themselves by the dire circumstance. Yes.
Right. So you say poverty is complex. Sometimes it's because of natural unemployment, sometimes because of recession, sometimes because the economy isn't doing well. Then that means that a lot of the reason why people are poor isn't because rich people hate them and the state is suppressing them, but sometimes things out of other people's control. So why do you allow them to get hurt and not punish the people who harm them?
Because this is nicely lead to my second question. That is why we should give them a right to self-defense, right? I think this is the same as a self-defense. What is a self-defense? There is a two-case scenario. First, government does not do their minimum duty. Then people should have a right to protect themselves, like the case of, someone comes to my property, then I can shoot them because I feel afraid of that person might harm me, right? The more than that, we follow the law, because if we follow the law, this society is going to provide me the minimum care. If these people doesn't provide me minimum care, why do I have to follow the law, right? This is the concept of the self-defense, and I think second speaker is going to deal with these cases, right? So, firstly, government is doing the stupid job. That is why government can punish these people. Second, these people have a duty to protect themselves based on their legal right. That is why we think this is the right thing to do. More than that, my first speaker clearly give you the ideas why prison is the bad place to rehabilitate these people. The simple response comes from DLO. We can train these guys. Outside of our prisons, right? If I feel threat, and my roommate probably raped me on the night, and other skinhead is trying to kill me. And even if there is a training method and class, I don't think the training is going to be very, very effective, right? But under our policy, even if there's a training session, and then while I'm getting the training skills, probably I have to commit a crime because I don't have a right, right? While I'm getting a job, I have to commit a crime because I can't eat. Under our policy, these people can get training and get skills, and they don't have to commit a crime. More than that, my Jun Tae also clearly argue many reasons why the moment you put these people in the prisons, these people cannot be rehabilitated, right? Because they cannot get a job. Because society have a very negative ideas. I used to be in the prison and no one is going to give you the job because shop owner does not believe you, right? These people is committing a stupid crime, that is why people can commit a crime again. So the moment you put these people in the prison, we think this is the problematic. More than that, these people cannot pay the fine. That is why even if I just pay 50 USD, I'm going to stay in the prison longer. We think that makes the vicious cycle worse. Then let's move on to my last argument why on the our policy it is better. We don't think people don't want to help the poor. We think people want to help the poor, but they have indifference. We think we can solve the problems with indifference. Then why indifference happening in today's debate? A, there's too much segregation, right? We have too much gated community. We don't share the public infrastructure, and media always portray the problem is being solved right now. People who commit a crime is bad guys who try to improve their life rather than escape from the poverty. That is why middle class cannot solve the problems. But under our policy, poor problem is their problem, right? When I go into the service station, sometimes poor is going to steal something from me. If I have a convenience store in the poor area, poor people is going to commit a crime and then I'm going to lose something. These people is going to recognize there is a problem. Then how our problem can be solved? There is a political person, political party, and political groups. They trying to say poor is the problem, but these people don't have a political power because they don't have a they don't have a political donations and too much critical mass. But under our policy, people are going to care about the opinions of these people because we want to solve the problem. That is why the government is better than opposition. 재밌죠, 심심하다.
It's so preposterous that the NC and all the government team is belittling the poor as incapable of making good choices, incapable of fixing the society as individual choices as well. We think as a team opposition, what we're trying to prove in this debate is not fixing the old problem our societies have. That is not the burden of this debate. The debate is about how we fix the system in terms of rehabilitating these individuals as well as sustaining the stable social orders and justice so everybody can have fair chances, everybody can have fair accessibility of the protection and security they're entitled to have. We think that what the Kim government failed in this way are following. Number one, they talk about that their principal problem is this. They're changing the cases and stances as convenient as possible. Firstly, they talk about how the society is broken, that our government is oppressing as all the individual poor, and now they're also talking about how rich are also complicit, and then all these different explanations, and there are also natural reasons why this just happens. We think that opposition, they already pointed out in the POI that how if only, number one, if the government is if the rich are not the complicit and there are natural orders and reasons this happens, then also why are we then oppressing these rich people and not even rich people, the poor people we're going to tell you who are going to be the victim of the system are going to be the cause of the, being the responsible for the action they're not committing. But secondly, we think they talk about how poor people were not the community that is reckless crime and so on and so forth. But Mr. Speaker, we have an issue, right? Because if their case is right, then the poor people will start to harm each other as well. Because of the self-protection, you don't want to be killed by the gun owning and private soldiers being hired by the rich people. So you probably go to the low security areas to try to steal from those people who are supposed to be allies of your power to change the society. We think that when that happens, obviously there's no rehabilitation whatsoever. Only the killing for the a Hunger Games. You just kill the most vulnerable people and they're also harming this society. And then next, they talk about the self-defense as an absolute choices they will have and this somehow the rights you can have. No, completely different cases because the self-defense is when you're literally cornered to the very marginal places, then when you have absolutely no option to begin with. If this were the cases, then it should have been all the poor out there right now to commit the crime and try to steal from other people. We don't have the system right now. Why? Because poor people are capable of making choices. They can be able to make positive choices. For example, go out, try 100,000 times to get the better chances. And when you do that, this is the time you get the heavier and more positive influences to yourself. Because now you're not just being poor and incapable, and you're nothing but a verbal vigilante going all to society to attack others, but it's about changing the society on your own as well. We think this is a positive message we'd like to give to the society, the poor, and also to other people. And more so, we also have a problem, right? Because when you start to talk about only the poor have self-defenses, and then they never engage the what opposition talked about so far. For example, how rich people, how the society, and those people will still start to feel threatened. They now feel like only the government only allows the poor to protect themselves, so-called protect themselves, and then now we have no resources, so now I'm going to actively segregate myself from the poor people. I don't want to be associated with this poor area. I don't want to go to the Harlem. I don't want to set up NGO. I don't want to try to be engaged with them whatsoever. What kind of society is it? You basically have a one state with the poor people stealing and they associate themselves, trying to believe that they're protecting themselves, but in fact, you are being bullied and you're being disengaged from all the people in our society. This is not the healthy world that we'd like to live in. We think that, and then lastly, they talk about how this is a bad place to teach them. Well, number one, we have a principles, internalizing message that our society has towards the poor people that this action is wrong, and that principally, you trying to steal from other person, bad intention, bad action, this is wrong thing to go. They never talk about the big principle, what kind of messages this actually brings to the people. Yes.
But the problem is the government could do all those things for the past 100 years and they haven't. What is the principal justification the government can put these people in jail when they're not doing their principal obligation to the poor?
Well, principal, okay, now they are now only pushing us to the very unfair burden, right? The fact that the government has been having issues, for example, unable to bring up the best case scenario of the minimum wage, or best case scenario of the healthcare system, is not because they would like to attack, for example, the poor, as they also conceded. There are a lot of issues going on constantly. That's why we believe the poor people, by being a law-abiding citizen, have more legitimacy and a reason to call out to the society that we also are following. That's why we want to change this. That's why we need a fixing. What they're doing is eradication of system. The reason we started a society with the rules of law, the reason of our statehood being existing, is because we'd like to help ourselves with the system that even though I don't have a resource, even though I'm the poor, I still want to be protected. We think that that's the concept they are not having. Because as we have discussed so far, and also talking more, that this is a part where the poor people will be even more marginalized by the literal physical senses, because now you're being attacked by the expense of your stealing. Even though you're rightfully doing it, that people will still try to self-help themselves, for example, the rich people. So let's talk about more bigger issues as well. So we think that we have to ask this big question, right? So what kind of a situation where the qualifying conditions will punish the people? We think in this case there are two big issues, right? One, action, and two, intention. We think that both of them categorically, it fits in to the system. These poor people being punished. One, literally, your action itself is harming the others. Like you go out actively and then try to steal either a loaf of bread, or either, for example, for example, in order to go to hospital, whatever it is, we think that this action is causing the other people harm is essentially problematic. But more importantly, we think that with intention, even the morality talks, how intention is good, and how this is the best case scenario, how people will people with good intention are trying to protect themselves. What? We think that your idea in itself is selfishness that this society is not condoning. We think the problem is this. You giving yourself excuse that you can do whatever you want as convenient as the circumstances changes, also give you no reason and incentive to change your behavior in the long term as well. No lessons to be learned. But more importantly, we think that it's a problem there to talk about. Let's talk about the last point about how welfare and eradication this issue. We think the problem is this. As we have brought up this issue constantly, that you helping yourself gives a complete legitimacy to the other people. No reason for the politics, no reason for the business whatsoever in the society to care about your well-being anymore, because now you have your own means to fix your own individual situation rather than the group as a poor people, as a society would like to go for. We think the reason we need to punish the poor is not because we hate the poor. It's not because we want to make the worst of society for them. It's because we want to make the system that everybody fits in, where they also feel the protection of the society. That's why we win this debate.
Turn it on.
Slide up. Oh, this one.
To say that the poor have a choice is to say that the poor are evil and they made a deliberate immoral choice to steal and to harm society when they could have just gotten a job, worked harder, and made an honest life for themselves. That's just not true. Structural poverty means that when you are born poor, you stay poor by circumstance. When you grow up in a poor neighborhood, you don't have basic amenities or a minimum quality of life. Poor people go to poor schools that are in lower quality and they drop out in order to get a job. You can work 3 jobs and still have no minimum wage in order to feed the rest of your family. You grew up in a poor neighborhood surrounded by other gangs and criminalities. When they told you in status quo the poor will steal from the poor, let's do a reality check. In status quo, the poor are already the #1 victims of crimes because they live in those neighborhoods. They want welfare and they can't get welfare at the side of status quo that they will try to defend. They cannot afford healthcare. They cannot compete for job opportunities against the middle class. So you wanted to say that they have a choice. But it's just not true. Being born poor isn't a choice. Making a choice to survive is not a real choice. Survival isn't a choice. Survival is a necessity. Under that framework, 3 questions. Firstly, what is the state's duty when it comes to the punishment of the poor? Secondly, how should a fair criminal justice system treat the poor? Thirdly, how will this affect society's treatment of the poor? Number 1, state duty. Let's look at the 2 things that opposition wanted to talk about. They were concerned about the rights of people in society who are also harmed by the poor because the poor can now steal from them. But on the side of government, we gave you a trade-off, which is now the rights of the poor at that moment with no basic needs couldn't find any other way to feed themselves for that particular moment. When you have conflicting rights in a debate, how do you resolve it? Let's balance the harms that are being suffered by both of these communities. For those shopkeepers, for these individuals who steal food from them, they will still have a running business. What was the setup that you heard coming from our Prime Minister? The people who fall below the poverty line are not all low-income people and all poor people. These are people who didn't get welfare. These are the people who don't have any basic needs for those moments. So these individuals are the exception and not the rule. They're trying to create this Hunger Games dystopia. That's not true. There are not many people who are completely unable to access their basic needs. They're stealing things like bread, like butter, like milk. So whatever that they're losing for these shopkeepers is petty change. They're not losing their business. What is the conflicting right that is being lost right now? These are poor people who are preserving their right to life, which is the highest possible right that any individual human being has to have. On top of that, we told you the only reason why they don't have access to this right to life is because both the government and the society has completely failed them by trapping them into those circumstances of poverty. We don't give them any meaningful opportunities for them to become richer. There's no such thing as a social mobility. We would like to think that if you're born poor, you can just work hard and then go up to the middle class. But no, there's no opportunity because education that you get from poor public schools are not meaningful enough for you to compete with the middle class. So with that set in mind, how about these other things that they said, oh, government has a contradiction because there are natural reasons why there's poverty. Yes, as he told you, there's natural reasons why there are poverty, which is why welfare systems are not perfect. But 99% of structural poverty is caused by the rich people who trap them within those structures of poverty. That's not a contradiction. These 2 factors coexist with one another, which is why poor people are trapped into those situations. What is the principal engagement that we had coming from the first speaker that we did not hear an engagement to coming from the side of opposition? That how do rights are being given? Rights and duties of the people are reciprocal in nature. That means people and the government have a contract with one another. I give up my rights to the government. That means the government can punish me, put me into jail, but the exception is the government then has a duty to protect me. The government has a duty to give me my basic needs. Why in the case of these poor individuals, the government has structurally failed to give me my basic needs, but somehow I still must give back and follow by the laws that you impose onto me? Where is the reciprocal nature of this relationship when the state has failed their duty? I therefore have no duty to abide by the rules of your law that result in my oppression. Second argument. Second issue, how should a fair justice system treat the poor? 2 things that opposition wanted to talk about. Firstly, the idea of proportional punishment, so therefore they're not punishing the poor too much. This is not true, how, for 2 reasons. Number 1, the poor cannot afford legal fees to protect themselves within these courts. They are given legal aids who don't care about their actual well-being. But secondly, petty
crimes are being punished by things like small fines, right? But poor people don't have the money to pay fines. So how does the justice system work? If you don't have money to pay fines, the court converts that amount of money into days in jail. So for every $1 that you don't pay for the side of the government, you stay in jail for 1 entire week. So for me stealing a loaf of bread, I could end up for months in jail. And this is far worse because actually the taxpayers pay a lot more money to keep poor people in jail than they do to just compensate the shopkeeper for the bread that you just stole. So obviously your justice system doesn't make any sense in terms of trade-off. Secondly, in terms of this destruction of society where everybody steals from each other, again we told you people who fall below the poverty line is an exception to the rule. But secondly, you don't steal from other poor people because poor people also don't have things to be stolen. But thirdly, if society has something to be lost, but if that something lost is ensuring the survival of another human being, we think that is a good thing, we think that is a good trade-off, and society needs to suffer those harms in order to protect the people who are most vulnerable in today's debate. Let's look at our principal engagement on how a justice system should work, but we heard no clear response from that side of the house. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so comparatively, that you on your side, you don't change the perspective on the poor, the fact that the rich will always see the poor as a continuous threat. How do you help them later?
Yeah, so that is my third issue. I'll tell you when I'm engaging with that. Let's look at our principal engagement on how a justice system should work. We told you two things. In order to have criminal liability, you have to fulfill A, criminal action, and B, a criminal intention. But poor people don't have criminal intention. They're not evil. They're not born evil. They don't want to cause you harm. They're merely desperate to survive. But secondly, a recognized legal principle is that self-preservation is an absolute legal defense. Even in the case of murder, where you killed another human being and took away their life, you still don't have any criminal punishment because you did that action in order to survive. There is no principle or moral difference here. To give them moral liability is to continue your discrimination of the poor. Third question, how will this affect society's treatment of the poor? Here I will engage with Hannah's POI on stigma and mistrust of the poor. I have 3 responses. Firstly, under your status quo and your characterization, we will never have any of the political incentives to create the welfare system you speak of exactly because society hates the poor, doesn't like the poor, doesn't want to help them. So when they told you in this debate, we can have a welfare system to help them, they're lying to you because they told you that very society hates the poor people and therefore doesn't want to help them. You have to defend a failing mess. Secondly, we don't think society lacks any humanity or empathy. When you put into context, the poor people are not stealing luxurious items like TV, they're stealing food in order to survive. We think society will empathize with them and help them. But thirdly, even if they end up hating the poor, if they refuse to fix the problem, they have more to lose because then poor people will steal even more. So the middle class will still try to protect them as a bargaining chip. Because if you don't fix the welfare system, more poor people will steal from you and then you have more to lose. For all those reasons, we must not punish the poor for stealing.
You're here.
No? This side of the house asks, what about people with absolutely nothing? What about people who work 3 jobs and still fail to make ends meet? People who can't provide food for their family. People with no shelter. People with not enough income. These honest to good people are exactly those who are worse off on the government bench. People, honest to good people, who work like hours and hours of their lives trying to provide for their family. The policy of not punishing those who steal from them is similar to just drawing a large red target on all of these individuals and allowing them to be stolen from with absolutely no remorse from the people who steal from them. We think a world with greater protection for these individuals and greater protection for property in general benefits the poor most of all, because it's these people with little to no security, these people with little to no protection from those who wish to steal from them. And if it's true that poor people are the largest targets of more crimes today, then all the more that's going to happen in a world where you don't punish anybody who steals from them. So, what am I going to discuss in this whip speech? First, I'm going to engage their principle, which if you really look at, is the only case from government bench. Secondly, I'm going to push the pragmatic and prove to you why the reasonable response of fixing all of the inheritance tax,
gerrymandering issues is the right response to helping the poor versus this radical response of just allowing them to steal from anybody. So first, the principle. They say, minimum care. The reason why people are always poor is because the government is oppressive, the government hates the poor, the government has zero resources. Why is this, first of all, not a reasonable context for this debate to exist in? Because if it's true that the state has zero resources, the state hates the poor and will not help them in any and all contexts, then on their side, the state will also not be able to fix welfare systems. The state will also not be able to help the poor. So we must put this debate in a reasonable context, where the state does not absolutely hate the poor, and the state does have some resources. That is the only way for this debate to occur. What does that then mean? The second level now is, the reason why people are poor is, like what NC says, very, very complex. It's not always the case that when people are poor, it's because rich people hate them, and the state hates them, and everybody hates them, and nobody wants to help them. A lot of the time, it's because of things that are out of control of rich people, or governments also, right? You can't control when there's a global recession that takes place, which is usually when unemployment happens the most, and poor people are delved into poverty. It's when depressions happen the most, ladies and gentlemen. When things happen, and not even rich people know what to do about it. So what happens then? We ask, if it's true that it's out of these people's control, then why should they be targeted? And why should they be harmed for things that they don't directly cause in the first place? That was something they never really answered on their side. But they say, self-defense. Lucie answered this quite well when she said, self-defense in real life and the way it's applied is if you're pushed to a corner, you have no way to escape whatsoever, and the only way out is if you push the person away from you so you can run away. This is not an analogous situation, and I urge you to look at this reasonably. The poor are not, the only option for the poor isn't always to steal, which is why in status quo, not all poor people are thieves, ladies and gentlemen. The way you look at it should be, there are many options actually for poor people. You have a rise of social awareness and people creating NGOs, doing volunteer work to help the poor. You have more jobs open to them. You have oceanic countries like Australia and New Zealand offering jobs to ex-convicts as required by state policy. You even have, in developing countries, the poor as the largest voting blocs. In Thailand and the Philippines, they even outnumber the middle class and the rich in terms of who to elect for the next president, right? So there are many instances of the poor actually doing well and finding ways to help themselves without having to steal, and no response whatsoever for why stealing ought to be the only option for these individuals. Next, they say, but the problem is, look at the world. There's bad minimum wage, no welfare, no loans. These are direct government policies that harm the people. So our first question is, why is the response then to fix this with a solution that does not directly target these problems? What Hannah told you up front is, if the problem is bad minimum wage, then we should probably fix minimum wage. If the problem is a lack of inheritance tax, then the solution is fix inheritance tax. There's no clear reason why the solution ought to be to harm the rich people or to harm people who are innocent. And in fact, them doing this harms the poor more. Why? Because first of all, there's less of an incentive for states to fix these policies now because the state feels like the poor is already helping themselves. There's no need for the state to do anything if poor people have a way of helping themselves already, so why should they bother trying? The second reason why it's bad is because this prevents people as well from getting support and supporting the cause of the poor. Why? Because they're gonna get stolen from, ladies and gentlemen. What people will see is that these people are criminals. These people are harmful to them. If a poor person stole from my house, I'm not gonna support this person's cause. So even if there's an existing movement run by poor people, rich people or middle-class individuals are unlikely to want to help them. So if you want to fix any of these harmful policies, you don't actually do them on their side. But lastly, they say the only thing they're going to steal is just butter and bread. No, right? Like if I were poor, in this context of government bench, I'm not going to stop at just stealing butter and bread. Realistically, I'm going to go into the richest house I know and steal whatever I can. I'm going to steal everything in this classroom. I'm going to steal from everyone's pockets right now, steal that camera, like filming me right now, and everything everybody has. Because if there's no consequence to anything I do, then I'll just do whatever I can. And that's the problem, ladies and gentlemen. People don't know what's commensurate to take and what's not commensurate to take. And you're allowing poor people to be the determinant of their own justice, which is bad, right? Victims' justice is never good because people tend to take more than what's commensurate, and people tend to go beyond what's right. Now, last question. How do you help the poor best of all? We brought you 4 arguments that were unresponded to. First, we said blanket discrimination. We said if rich people don't know who's poor, who's good, and who's bad, the response of rich people will just be to avoid poor people in general. You have less companies hiring poor people overall, less NGOs wanting to enter these communities because they just can't trust them with their money. Second, we said there's a lot of poor on poor harm. People who are most likely to be stolen from are those with no security and are most proximate to criminals. People with literally no consequences to steal from. Third, we said there's a greater interaction on our side in a world where there's less reason for people to be averse towards the poor. On their side, the only thing they say is, people will find out eventually about the state of poverty. But if it's true, why isn't anything fixed now, right? You need something to push that. And the way to do it is by distinguishing those who are bad and those who are good, and finding ways to help the poor people that exist right now. And the only way to do that is by opposition mention. Thanks.
One thing we agree with the government of today's debate, that we don't think that poor was born to be poor or was born to be evil. We think that when the only thing that though, in the end of the debate, I want you to remember is our opposition is the only one who actually believes in not making the poor an evil entity as a group and as individual. We think it's so preposterous from the government to talk about how, look, society is broken. So as a government, we don't think this is solvable. So you know what? You help yourself. What kind of government is that? We think that the excellent opposition, like all the members of the opposition has told you, when there's a problem, we try to fix it. How you try to fix it? To listen to the people who are influenced. Like who? The poor. The only possible way the poor can have a voice is when they actually have a legitimacy to do so. What kind of society will be when the middle class, when the other rich people, or even your poor neighbor who was stolen from you also now hate yourself? We think this is a society of broken trust, broken affection to each other. Let me tell you a story. So let's imagine there's a whole process of the individual life of this poor person. So let's imagine I was born poor, and then my mom is sick, and then we don't have food right now, and then I go out and I want to try to fix something. But obviously, then I don't want to steal someone, right? I don't want to harm other people if I had other choices. That was the context everybody wanted to talk about. But in that cases, obviously I want to go out, right, and try to get some job. Let's say very minimum wage, but still giving some loaf of bread kind of money. I go to convenience store. But in a convenience store, the owner would not like to give you a job. Why? Because now you are the person who can, by the law, like apparently, then who can steal from you if this person is so desperate. So if the person comes to you and asks, oh, so why are you getting this job? Oh, because I want to earn money to give my mom a medicine. Oh, so you're really poor. Hey, hold on. I don't want you. Like, you're the person who can't harm me. Why should I be helping you out? We think that when this context happens, this is a very problematic, right? Because now you have also legitimacy for these people, either middle class or the rich people, to actively discriminate these people because as their level of self-defense. Obviously, choosing the other person from the richer area, the people who are not desperate, is not a crime, right? It's about the hiring. So we think that this discrimination is even worse off. But then, now, I actually want to go for it, right? So, with my good intention of holding that I'm the only one who discriminated, right? Because now I have no legitimacy to call for changes. Look, people, can you help me? Like, I want this system to be fixed. I don't like this system. I don't like people discriminating. I don't like me being so poor. But who listens to you? Like, NGO who used to help you out is not scared about funding being stolen. And now the politicians who used to listen to you because of your voting bloc, now more fearful of the excuses that you're given to the poor is a good enough reason why we should stop caring them. It feels like that your resources are all gone. Even more problem is this. So when this all resources, you trying to be good as a poor is all limits and all all gone. Only thing you choose is to become evil. So if you remember this, that all the people who try to be good, all the people who try to maintain their status as like a good law-abiding citizen is now pushed to the corner to be evil entity who actively harm the other because this is the way you can solve your problem. This is the way government permitted you to be the problem solving. We think when that happens, obviously all the principal reasons why we have to stop this is gone, right? These people have a bad intention of trying to get out and harm other person, and now you also internal this is okay action. Why? Because what kind of other lesson is there? I mean, you try to help yourself, they say it's okay, so I try to go harm other people. But then, even in this case, you don't want to be killed, right? As we discussed. So all the targets of this debate is not going to be really the person who actively harmed you in the end. It's going to be the people who are limited resources. So for example, if I had a mom that I told you in this story, that even though I have a sick mom, I maybe had a bed, maybe I had a small bicycle, and now the other poor people come to you and then steal it because you don't have a security overall. We think this is a time that I, as a poor people, are just fundamentally fundamentally disenfranchised, fundamentally discriminated by society. We don't want this life. We want the poor people to be able to change their life with the help of each other, not harming the other people. That's why we're in this way.
I think the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was that convincing the world didn't exist, right? When a burglar has a gun at your head and he says your money or your life, that is not free choice. That is not the fact that you have agency. That is a core situation where both choices lead to your imminent destruction, which should not be recognized free choice. And I think that is analogous to the situation that is happening in the majority of countries right now, right? It is not simply enough for them to come up and say that the government can do other things, like welfare, like inheritance tax. For the past fucking 100 years, they haven't been doing so, and they can't simply get away with that without proving to us a realistic mechanism and why that's likely to happen under their model. That alone, and their lack of engagement to our principle, I think we're all in this debate, right? I want to give you an example right now. In Seoul, station, right now, back 20 years ago, it was a haven for homeless people. When Oh Se-un, the previous minister, became a mayor, he made the design Seoul policy, right? He wanted to make Seoul this mecca for people to come and be tourists, right? So he kicked all these people out. He put them out to other stations of these cold winters, and they say, according to reports, in winter times, death rates weekly of these homeless people are 100. Do we care? Yeah, I care. I care in terms of debating. I empathize with them. But in the real life situation, what do we do? What kind of progress do we see? We don't see anything that realistically happens. There's still homeless people dying in the real life context, right? In this circumstance, the question you should ask yourself is it too much to ask these people to defend themselves when they have no other alternative? But secondly, in this situation when apathy and antipathy towards poor already exists, is it not better that at least now the middle class have a realistic incentive because they're frightened that they might be stolen to actually strive for political change? I think that is the more intuitive word of realistic change than comparing for an opposite bench, right? Let's go on to one thing before we clarify this. They try to frame this debate in whip speech, which is new material, but try to frame it that this is a dystopian situation where people will steal from everyone. That's simply not true, right? This is a retroactive policy. From the beginning, we told you we will only give you absolvents once you steal proportionate to what you have, but also because you are under the poverty line. This means that for all the reasons it's unclear if you will be punished or not. The conclusion from that means you probably won't steal if you are if you're unsure if you are in a dire situation, right? Because even if I think I steal that I might be not punished, the fact that the court might decide differently. That fundamental uncertainty means that most people won't do it. But also the thing NC said, right? If you try to steal, you might get beat up. That itself is an inherent thing that most people won't steal. Then who are the likely people who will steal? It's the people in dire situations who are below the poverty line when they have no other alternative, right? In that circumstance, when they have that threat of punishment, I don't think they'll go out and steal from other poor people. If they have that uncertainty, they're most likely go for the bigger gamble, right? The gamble that gives them more things. They won't steal from a poor person who probably had nothing. They'll probably go to a store or a hospital or get medicine in the hospital when they know they have something to make that threat they have something reasonable to gain, right?
problem here is, okay, before, yeah, that was just extremely, it came out in the whip so I can engage, right? So also, let's talk about things about. The problem here is that they don't talk about the principal engagement. We gave you a bloat of reasons, right? Active oppression in terms of like inheritance tax, refusal to implement universal health care, which is made by the rich people. But even if you don't buy in that, the fact that they're enacting right now, that makes them complacent to the death, the things that we are not doing anything to solve the homeless people dying right now make us principally culpable. And in that threat, our collective as a government fundamentally lacking responsibility or a principal ability to punish these people. Because they don't engage with the principal claim here, right? If you want to punish someone, then you need to actually do your end of the contract. If you're not fulfilling that in the first place, then you do not have the principal obligation, the principal ability to punish these people. They can't simply say there's going to be practical harms without weighing in why that's something that's more harmful than the principal reason that they gave you in the current status quo. Right? Like the only thing they come up is that like the government can do this and that, people still have agency, but what agency, right? Compare the level of sophistication I gave in my PhD and their one-liner saying poor can do other things, government can solve the problem without giving us how these problems can be solved, right? The other thing that comes down to is the practical, utilitarian, decadent-like impact, right? They talk about stigmatizing, victimizing will increase, but we already have stigmatization, we already have victimization, we already are not doing anything the past 200 years to solve these people. They don't engage with NC's mechanism. Now the people feel a threat that they might be stolen from, and that is when they would try to make political changes and structural changes. Not right now. They feel empathy, but they're not doing shit. We would rather have a negative incentive like Malcolm X did compared to them doing nothing. We're very proud of